All right, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for another Spooky Month session. Today we have Sandra Wheeler. She's on the screen next to me somewhere, depending on what your screen looks like. Just to get us started real quick, in case you have any issues with audio or video throughout the presentation, I want to go over where the question box is. This is also where you can send any comments or questions throughout the presentation that you want answered. So if you are on a desktop, it's going to be right next to you in that little control panel. It will say questions. You can type them in there, and then we'll get them directly. We'll make sure to get as many answered as possible. If you're on a tablet, it's going to be on the top of your screen. It's going to look like a little circle with a question mark on it. If you pop that, a little box will pop up. And then finally, if you happen to be on a cell phone or a smaller screen, it's going to be right at the bottom of your screen with a question mark. And if you are on one of those smaller screens, you're probably only seeing me at the moment. Go ahead and just slide, but it will change with whoever is talking in the moment. But with that said, if you have any issues throughout the presentation, put it into the question box. We'll make sure to get you reconnected as fast as possible. We are recording this, so anybody who would like to watch it again later on, we'll send those recordings out shortly, as soon as it's available. And with that said, I'm going to pass it off to Sandra, and I'll be in the background.
All right, thanks so much for that warm welcome and introduction. I'm Dr. Sandra Wheeler. I am an associate lecturer in the Anthropology department at the University of Central Florida. And I am here to talk to you today about bones. So one of the things that I teach about and one of the things that I do research on is the human skeleton. So I teach classes about how archaeologists and people like me, I'm called a bioarchaeologist, which is a super fancy name for someone who studies human bones and human remains from archaeological contexts. So I'm really interested in finding out like what people did before they died, what they ate, how they lived, if they got sick, and then how they were buried. So all of that information tells us a lot about what people were doing in the past and what they experienced in the past. So some of my classes, I teach about the human skeleton, like you can see here. This is a real human skeleton that has been prepared for teaching. This is someone who decided that they were interested in science and they wanted to donate their body to science. And so we can use these bones to help other students learn about our bodies. We also can teach using replicas or casts of actual bone. So I brought some other things to look at. So here is a cast. It looks kind of like a person, but it's a little bit more beefy, a little bit more what we call robust. And this is a Neanderthal. So Neanderthals are kind of like ancient human cousins. This one is about 50,000 years old. So this isn't the real thing. I wouldn't be holding the real thing, but it is a replica or a cast of the actual skull that was found in France. I brought another skull to look at. This is also a replica. This is one of my favorites. It's really big. It's really beefy. You can see it has a lot of the same features as us as humans, but it's got these really big, heavy eyebrows, these really big, sharp teeth. It's got kind of a long head that goes back, this awesome kind of shark fin, or what we call a sagittal crust, this giant crust of bone. This is a gorilla skull from an adult male. So it's really big, it's really robust. They have really strong chewing muscles, but gorillas are mostly vegetarian. So they eat bugs. Sometimes they'll eat small lizards and small animals if they catch it, but they mostly eat plant material. So they've got this big, big mouth, these giant, giant teeth to eat a bunch of plants, which is also really cool. I brought a couple of tools that we use as archaeologists and bioarchaeologists to study human bones and other kinds of bones and artifacts. So we have a hand lens here. So we use this to look really, really close to the bone surface to see if we see any evidence of trauma or disease or anything weird about the bone. We have these measuring devices called calipers, and they measure very, very small things, or sometimes they can measure very, very big things. So we use these to measure all around the body to figure out how big someone was, whether they were male or female, or other things that we want to know about their bodies. This is a bigger version of a caliper that we can use to measure longer bones. And then we have, this is my favorite caliper. A caliper is just a fancy word for a ruler, different kind of ruler. This one is to measure weird shaped objects like your head, right? So you can use it to measure your head like that. And it tells us how wide your head was, how long your head was, and different things about your body. Now, I'm really interested if there are any questions out there in the audience about what is the purpose of having bones in the first place? Like, what do bones do for your body and in your body?
So you can also send answers into the question box along the way, and we'll make sure to read them out loud. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to go ahead and send those in.
I'll say, what do you think? What's important about your body? Bones feel pretty hard, right? They feel like they're kind of strong, right? Do you think they maybe help us stand up? They help us hold our bodies upright. What do you do when you dance? You kind of move around, right? And you move your body and you shake your body. Well, your skeleton helps keep your body straight and strong, and it helps you move around, right? So it's almost like the inside of your body helps you move around the world and experience the world in different ways. You may have not known, or maybe you do know, that your teeth are actually part of your skeleton. And they're the only part of your skeleton that is outside your body, right? That is exposed to the environment. And so your teeth are a super important part of your skeleton because they help you chew, right? They help you eat. They process your food, they mash it up before it goes into your body. And your skeleton actually uses all of those nutrients that you eat to keep your bones healthy. So it's really important to keep your teeth clean because your teeth are important to eat to keep your bones healthy. Let's see, what other interesting things about bones do I know? You probably know that your body is made up of mostly water. But did you know that your bones are also made up of water too? About 5 to 8% of your bones are actually made up of water. So it's really important to make sure that you drink water, lots of water, not just to keep your body healthy, but also to keep your skeleton healthy too.
So we do have a question coming in from the audience.
Okay.
They want to know what happens when you find new bones.
So find new bones like when you're digging for them?
I believe
like
so.
Okay. Well, so one of the things that archaeologists are really good at, people like me are really good at, is measuring things, taking photographs of things, and taking notes of things. So we're really, really good at documenting the things that we find. And it's really important when you're doing an archaeological excavation or you're doing a dig, that when you find bone or you find an artifact, you stop. You make sure you clean it off really well, you take pictures of it, you take notes of it, you draw it, you document it, and then you pick it up and then you can look at it. Because what's really important is we want to make sure that we know what else is with that bone, right? Is it one bone by itself, or is it one bone that's peeking out that's attached to an entire skeleton, right? So we want to be really careful and make sure that we carefully document and we record everything. That's a really great question. And that's why we've got all of these tools, right? We've got lots and lots of different kinds of tools to record everything that we're doing, right? So once you remove that bone from the dirt, it's gone forever and it's in a different place. So we just want to make sure that we properly photograph and document and record all of it before it's removed.
So they want to know if there is a measurement that is most important when you start looking.
If there's a measurement that's most important, probably the most important thing is to take really good pictures. So you want to photograph, photograph, photograph. And then after you take the bones out of the ground, you have to figure out, like, what do you want to know about the bone, right? Do you want to know if it's human? Do you want to know if it belongs to an animal? Do you want to know if it's a piece of wood that kind of looks like a bone? That happens sometimes, or a piece of rock that looks like a bone? And so what we want to do is take a really close look at it, right? We have things like hand lenses, magnifying glasses that we can look at very close. We can compare the bones that we found with what we know about the human skeleton or other animal skeletons and say, hey, this definitely looks like bone, but it doesn't look like it belongs to a human bone. It looks like it's a different animal. And then we can figure out what that animal is by using books and photographs and other examples of different animals. So we find this out in Florida all the time. If you're walking around and you see a bone on the ground, you know, you're probably going to want to pick it up and look at it and figure out what kind of bone it is. And I actually do this all the time. Luckily, none of it's human. It's all animal bone. But I'm like, what is this? It's small. It could be a bird. It could be a small mammal like a raccoon or a possum. And so then I use different books and different resources to figure out what exactly the bone is and what kind of animal it belongs to. Kind of like an investigation, right? Like kind of like you're a detective. You're looking for answers, you're asking questions, and then you're using things like books and resources to find out more information about what that bone is and maybe why it's in that place. That's a really good question.
That's all the questions we have at the moment.
Okay. Let's see. What else can we say? I know I've got some bone trivia for you. How many bones do you think are in a grown-up's body? So an adult's body. How many different bones do you think there are? It's a pretty big number.
So we have a couple of answers coming in. One of them says 750. Another one says 125.
Close. Getting
We
closer.
have another one that says about 350.
So those are great guesses. The actual number is 206. So the adult human skeleton has about 206 bones, but the newborn skeleton, so a baby that was just born, has about 400 bones in their body. And what's also crazy is they have tiny, tiny teeth up in their mouth that haven't erupted yet. So those are pretty big numbers. 700 is super big, but maybe a tiny baby could have like 600 bones. But once they're about to be born, they have about 400. And then as they keep growing, those bones start growing together. They become one big piece of bone, so that by the time you're an adult, you have about 206 or so bones in your body. Do you know how many adult teeth are in your mouth, or how many should be there? Like grown-up teeth?
So we have some guesses coming in. We
Okay.
have one that says 60. We have
60 teeth.
We have another that says 40. And
Very
another one
close.
that says 50. So we're kind of
Very close. Wow. So if you had 70 teeth in your mouth, you might look more like a crocodile, right? That's a lot of teeth for the size of our mouth. So we actually have about 32 teeth in our mouths if you have all of your teeth and they're all present. So that's 32 grown-up teeth. But little kids, when they're growing, their mouths are much smaller, they're not as big, and their teeth are smaller. So they only have about 20 teeth in their mouth when they all come out, and all the baby teeth are erupted in the mouth by about between 2 and 3 years of age. But then around 6, 7 years old, you start losing your baby teeth, and then your adult teeth come in. And this is also because your face is growing, your mouth is getting bigger. There's way more room in your mouth for those big adult teeth. So that by the time you're like 12 or so, all of the teeth in your mouth are grown-up teeth. So those are really good guesses. So 70 teeth is a lot of teeth, 50 teeth is a lot of teeth, 32 fits just right in our adult mouths. Those are really good
Now
questions.
they want to know if if the Neanderthal and the gorilla also go through similar changes.
Absolutely. So the gorillas have the same number of teeth in their mouth as we do. The adults have 32 teeth, and their babies or their little kids have 20 teeth. As those baby teeth get lost or come out, the adult teeth grow in to replace them. So one of the things that you can see about these gorilla teeth is they're actually pretty big. They're really, really big. But you know what? Gorillas have gigantic mouths. So they have really big mouths for the size of their teeth. And then they have a very kind of projecting face. It looks almost like a snout, but not really. But if you look at our face is pretty flat. So our teeth are pretty compact and kind of squished into our mouths, whereas the gorillas have this nice long jaw that helps fit those really big teeth in their mouth. So here, I'll show you what you can kind of see that, their jaw looks like. It's very kind of like a U shape. And these back teeth, these molars, are parallel to one another, which means they're right side by side. And this is really different from, say, our mouths. So here's those back teeth, those molars. It's a very, very short mouth. It's kind of a very short U-shaped. And then so you can see how much smaller our molars are, especially compared to gorilla molars. Now this is a Neanderthal, so they have slightly bigger teeth than modern humans than us, but it's pretty much the same in terms of the shape and how the teeth fit in the mouth. Those are really, really good questions. And here's the bottom jaw of the gorilla. That's really cool. So you can see this really cool kind of U shape. They're very large canines. And then they use these bottom teeth here to help strip all the leaves off of the plants that they eat. And then they just chomp them up and chew them up in their mouths, which is very cool. Are there any other questions about teeth? The different animals have different numbers of teeth, but gorillas, because they're primates, humans, because we're also kind of classified as primates, and then Neanderthals, because they're kind of close to us in terms of like, they're kind of like our cousins. We all have the same number of teeth, but they're shaped a little bit different.
I think we have a question coming in.
Okay.
They were asking about the Florida mastodon. We learned about that in our last webinar, so I'm assuming they have a question related to that.
Maybe the shape of the teeth, because mastodons have like, their teeth are like this big. They're really, really big. So it tells you something about what mastodons ate. So teeth are really important, right? Teeth just tell a lot about what animals eat, the environment that they're in, maybe how old they are too, right? Because we can look for, if there's any baby teeth, that might suggest the individual's younger, or if they're all adult teeth, well, okay, this is maybe an adult individual. But mastodons have these super, super large grinding molars, right? Because what do mastodons eat? They eat a whole lot of plant material that they kind of shove in their mouth with their noses, and then they just grind it and grind it and grind it. and then their teeth wear down and wear down and wear down. And so you can look at a mastodon tooth and get an idea of maybe how old they were based on the amount of how much their tooth has worn down, because it tells you how long they've been chewing for throughout their whole lives, or the types of foods that they've been chewing on, if they're soft or if they're really hard and abrasive. The mastodon teeth are really cool because they're big, but it also gives you an idea of, well, how big is the animal that had these teeth in their mouths, these teeth in their mouth, right? So if you only find a tooth, you might say, all right, well, we know how big this tooth is. How big must the head be to hold this tooth, right? And that's actually a pretty common approach sometimes when you find sort of isolated teeth like this. You can make a really good educated guess about the type of animal that it came from, or the type of reptile that it came from, and then maybe how big they were, and then the kinds of things that they ate. So it's one of the cool ways that we can look at really old stuff and make interpretations, or kind of make some really good guesses about what that animal ate and what kind of environment it lived in.
So they want to know, how do you know how old a skeleton is, and were there skeletons found from the same time that mastodons were found?
Well, so there are lots of different ways that you can figure out how old a skeleton is, like how long it's been buried in the ground. So there's lots of different methods that can be used. Probably one of the most well-known is radiocarbon dating. So radiocarbon dating measures the decay of carbon, which is an element that gets absorbed into our bodies, and we all have carbon in our bodies because we're alive and we're breathing and we eat stuff. But when you die, the carbon in your body kind of starts to break down at a very specific rate. And so scientists can take that carbon and measure it, and then figure out how long it's been since that individual, or since that carbon has stopped being taken up into the body. And radiocarbon dates can give you dates up to like 75,000 years, so pretty old, not as old as mastodons. So you can use other kinds of methods to figure out how old things are if they are several 100,000 years old, like maybe with mastodons, or even millions of years old. So there's lots of different ways that scientists can measure how old a bone is. But probably
Awesome.
radiocarbon is the best, yeah.
And I know we're down to the final 5 minutes, so make sure to send in all your questions. We'll still keep getting them answered along the way. I know you're sending those in right now. So what is your favorite part of your job, of what you do?
So the favorite part of my job is teaching. So I teach at a university in a classroom. I teach in lots of different classrooms. So actually teaching is one of the favorite things, my favorite parts of my job. My other favorite part is traveling and doing field work. And so doing field work means, like, I leave my house, I leave my university, and I travel someplace in the world to study skeletons, or to work with archaeologists who also do field work. So I've been very fortunate to be able to travel to Mexico, to Belize, to Italy, and also to Egypt, to be able to do my research and then work with other archaeologists that do similar kinds of things. So I think those two are my kind of the favorite parts of my job, the most favorite parts of my job. And I love teaching about bones. I love teaching about primates. I actually teach primatology at UCF as well. So I just really enjoy interacting with students and answering questions. And, it's always great when students ask me things that I don't know, because then I can go find out and then tell them, when we meet again. Like, I didn't know that was a really great question. Let me find out, and then we'll talk about it the next class.
So now they want to know, what's the creepiest thing you've ever found when out in the field?
Does a mummified hand count? Like just the hand that was
Oh,
like this? Yeah, I did find a mummified hand. Yeah, And I was like, oh, what's that? And then I brushed the sand off and I was like, it's just a hand, like nothing else, like just a hand. That was probably the creepiest for sure. It was a very old hand. So it was like a 2,000-year-old mummified hand. It wasn't like modern. It was very, very old from an archaeological site that had been looted. Actually, there were looters that came in, which are basically like criminals that go into archaeological sites and steal stuff. And they don't think that human bone is important, so they will go in tombs and like throw all that stuff out and look for pottery or artifacts that they can sell. And so part of my job is to go out and survey these areas where the looters have come in. And yeah, that's where I found the hand, just a hand, nothing else.
So they want to know if they ever discovered the rest of the bones after, or the rest of the mummy.
So sometimes you'll find the rest of it in a different place. In this case, we found the foot kind of way further off, but sometimes you only find one piece because that's all that's left. Yeah, but the hand was a little creepy.
Awesome. And that's all of our questions. I know we're down to the final minute. Is there anything you would like to leave with students who may be interested in also studying anthropology?
Be curious, ask questions, and anthropology is about studying people. So if you're interested in human behavior, if you're interested in humans in the past, definitely check out anthropology. It's an awesome discipline, and I love it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for your expertise. I want to thank you to all the classes who joined. You guys asked fantastic questions, and thank you for sending in your comments along the way. If you have any questions later down the road and you're watching this recording, go ahead and send them in. We'll get them answered hopefully. And with that said, thank you so much again for your expertise and your time today. And I hope everybody has a great spooky season and a wonderful happy Halloween.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Bye.